Hello, and welcome to Blockchange Solidarity, the podcast where we ask what blockchain can do for us. What is blockchain? What is crypto? Could it rescue us from our current dystopia? Come with us as we explore the very real potential to enhance human freedom, and as we delve into the darker side, predicting the Bond-villain potential of this current bleeding edge. Join us, a group of friends, in a pub style, as we discuss the overlaps between this technology and politics, economics, the environment, culture, and sci-fi, to understand for ourselves the seemingly mysterious, futuristic world on our horizon. Bang, bang. Welcome back to Blockchain Solidarity, everyone. We're back for another episode with our rotating hosts and some special guests this episode for the first time, some friends of the show. We have Mia, our host from Web3 Workers Pod. Mia, how are you doing?
I'm okay, man. It's rough out here, but I'm here.
Rough? Why is it rough? Why are you saying it's rough?
Oh, God, I just went back to work. I spent 6 months in political revolution land, and now I am back in my corrupt, outdated local.
Oh, dear. Okay, that is rough. That's the perfect way to describe it. So I'm sorry for you, bro. But you need to bring those experiences of roughness to Web3 Workers Pod, which is your pod. So
Right.
Absolutely. And we're joined by Spencer, Clean and Medic. You'll know him from Twitter. How are you, buddy? How's things going?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to these topics, this discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait to get into it. We've had Spencer on before when we did our episode with Crystal and JournoDAO. Speaking about JournoDAO, a few months back it must have been. That was a really interesting discussion, guys. Folks, if you haven't listened to that yet, go back and check it out. Really interesting discussion on how journalism is changing, how Web3 is changing the face of journalism. Spencer, of course, is involved in PubDAO. You should check that out as well. Spencer, do you want to maybe spend a little bit of time, 60 seconds, on telling folks listening what PubDAO is? Because I think it's crucial. People maybe know what JournoDAO is, but because they've listened to our episodes before, but tell them a little bit about PubDAO.
Sure, yeah. So PubDAO was started by the team at Decrypt a little over a year ago as a decentralized newswire, and it was trying to get its footing there. We couldn't quite get a product market fit there. We tried content as a service DAO, as like a media collective. That there was some interesting stuff going on there, but ultimately still not too much of a product market fit. And then I became really interested in trying to turn it into a chamber of commerce, a nonprofit. In the US, there's a certain type of nonprofit tax designation for a chamber of commerce. But because PubDAO wasn't founded as a nonprofit, I'm going to go about this chamber of commerce for Web3 publishing in a separate project, which I may be able to share later. It's ASOP, or Autonomous Enterprise for the Stewardship of On-Chain Publishing. So a kind of nonprofit to promote the whole industry of Web3 publishing and using on-chain technology for immutable storage and censorship resistant and all that stuff for publishing. So
Cool.
That's where I'm at right now in that transition. Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I think technology can change how a lot of nonprofits work. So maybe that'll be part of the conversation, but
Totally.
if not,
we should really be doing an episode on PubDAO as well. Maybe that's one for the future. We need to have you on just to talk PubDAO in general. Seems like a full episode.
Totally.
Yeah.
So thanks for that, Spencer. And we have Yves, who's the podcast host of Fiat Lux Podcast. Yves, how are you doing? Thanks for joining us, buddy.
I'm doing good, thanks. And yeah, thanks for the invite. Appreciate it.
Balancing us out with some non-American accents. Where are you based in the UK, buddy? It was up north somewhere, wasn't it, the last time?
Yeah.
Where was it exactly?
I'm in the northwest.
Blackpool,
Yep.
wasn't it? Yeah, that's what it was. He's done a much nicer accent than I have. Everybody's there you go. Much easier on the ear, I find anyway. Check out his podcast, folks. Fiat Lux. He's had some absolutely terrific guests on for the first sort of 5 episodes there. Really interesting conversations. Great podcaster. So really check his stuff out. We're glad to have him on. Let's get into it, folks. What we do here, as you know, is we pick some general topics in the crypto world, and we bring some friends together to discuss discuss maybe some topical news happening in crypto, or just some more theoretical concepts. And we've picked a few interesting ones. Let's dive straight into it. The first one I wanted to speak to you guys about, and it kind of comes out of our other podcast, Crypto Dark Pod, which we've been discussing. It's all about scams, hackers, what to do with them. They never get caught. What should we do? And it just was stuck in my mind. Like, we want to get away from the state as the sort of, the entity that sort of enforces the law, if we're all about decentralization. So the question is if we find a hacker or a scammer that screwed over somebody in the working class, an everyday person who's scammed the life out of them, and we track them down and we find them, which was the case with the episode we just did with an everyday guy. He sleuthed down his hacker and found him. What should we do? What should we do? What is the obligation on a decentralized blockchain Web3 community? What can we do? What should we do with these kind of folks? Like, what is our responsibility outside the state? Yves, do you want to have a bash at this first? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess I would say in an ideal world, maybe my first answer would be make better systems. So make the things more secure, make maybe better options for recovery of assets, educate people, obviously, on how to protect themselves. We want to sort of give people more autonomy, and self-governance,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
that's at least one of the core principles of the whole space. So yeah, I think that's maybe an ideal way to tackle a problem. But maybe, I don't know how viable that is.
Well, that's a challenge, isn't it? Like, it seems like it's a constant challenge to be able to even prevent it. But let's say in the hypothetical instance that we do track down and find the real life identity of someone who's stolen the life savings of an everyday person. What do you guys imagine in the theoretical world which we're trying to build away from the state? Like, how should a crypto community deal with someone who is ultimately trying to, in their own way, really damage it? Do we have any means? Should we be thinking about these? Because I think, like, scams are just damaging the reputation of crypto so much. So in a theoretical world away from the state, how would a decentralized society deal with crypto hacker criminals?
I mean, there is sorry, just to jump in quick.
Yeah.
There is a decentralized I think it's this platform. I think it's called Kleros.
That's right.
You guys
Oh,
know
yeah,
about that? Yeah,
that.
you guys
Yeah,
might know more about it. So if you riff on it if you like.
I haven't used it myself, but my mind did go there about. I haven't used it, so maybe I'm glossing over some of the details. But I think it's a decentralized jury and arbitration platform where I would imagine there's like some randomly selected set of users that have joined the platform, and then they're presumably given some information about a case, or maybe this is how Kleros works, but in principle, I'd imagine a jury protocol. Yeah, it's worth looking into. But I mean, beyond that, my answer, I guess, would just be maybe write a story about it and try to take the journalistic route. I mean, I think in certain cases, I know you wanted to avoid working with the state apparatus here, but I know in certain cases, I think the SEC has some whistleblower program where if you're able to point out like sanctioned funds somewhere, then you get kind of like a bounty for reporting some of that. So that's one option, but I think if you want to just go about it.
Yeah, well, I can respond to what Yves said because I totally agree just with the problem of hackers. So I come from a background of like cultural theory, personal development, conflict resolution, and we have to understand that any new technology that we have, it can be the most fantastic technology in the world, but if our human minds and our human psychology doesn't understand how to use it, it's not going to fulfill its function, right? Because at the end of the day, it's just a platform. It's an opportunity for us to become more decentralized, more autonomous, and more liberated. Becoming more autonomous and more liberated allows us to coordinate, to collaborate, to capitalize on our shared dreams, which would be the basic human needs of survival, community, education, things like that. So what Yves responded with is like, well, we would learn from it, we would build better systems, it would be an opportunity to evolve, to improve. And I agree with that. I found a big problem in our current cultural paradigm of conflict and separation, competition, is this idea of trying to eradicate deviance, that in some perfect world, like we shouldn't have anybody fucking with the system, and that's our goal. I think that's a misplaced understanding of the nature of growth itself.
That's
Like
interesting.
a
Okay.
healthy ecosystem has diversity, has questioning, has critique, and really the transparent aspect of technology, the democratic aspect, allows that critique to become that much more visible, and that would allow us to then improve. And so when people say like, what are we going to do about hackers, or has crypto lost its way, or maybe blockchain isn't the save all that we thought it was going to be, like, it's just a fucking system. It's a decentralized platform, and it can be used in whatever way we choose to use it. And if someone comes in and shows us how it's not working, well, that's fantastic. We have this opportunity to collaboratively adjust and improve based off of that critique, based off of that weakness. And then if someone hacks someone's life savings, I think in that rhetorical question, theoretical question, it's kind of assuming that we're still in a capitalist system, and that it even matters if your life savings is depleted. Because ideally, if we're going towards the ideal world, we would have our basic needs fulfilled, and that threat of survival would no longer be applicable.
I love how much in the future you're thinking literally to the post-scarcity society. You're 10 steps ahead of this kind of. I'm coming out of my Law and Order crypto dark pod. I wanna smash the hacker that's screwing over the working class. And she's like, oh, but there won't even be like anything like steal in the Star Wars world of the future.
Mm-hmm.
You got me there.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the old mindset, man. That difference is threat, and that we have to defeat it in order to survive. But a healthier mindset of understanding difference meaning choice and opportunity for growth, and the hacker becomes your greatest teacher.
So let me ask Spencer, do you think, I don't know how much you caught there because I think you got disconnected, buddy, but like no problem. Do you think there is anything to achieve in the meantime between the world that we're in now and the one that Mia is articulating? Is there anything to achieve with catching these hackers and the community somehow like excluding them in some way from participating in this world that we're trying to build? I mean, because it just seems like these hackers are everywhere. They're screwing over people in real and tangible ways. And whilst we have the world that we're in, can we as a crypto community find some ways to exclude them from the world that we're trying to build? And is that the right thing to do?
Yeah, well, I mean, if we're talking about just what we're capable of doing as kind of like vigilantes, I think it's totally possible to kind of blacklist some of these people. I mean, the tools that are at our disposal right now, you can send a non-transferable kind of like tar and feather badge to their NFT that can then use to like blacklist them from certain platforms, or some kind of POAP like non-transferable token that is a negative reputation factor. I mean, a lot of this you can very quickly get kind of nasty with some of these techniques. Whether or not we should do this is another kind of set of considerations for all the following circumstances. But I think the tools exist between this and like open source research and citizen journalism and all that. I think the tools exist to take justice into our own hands if we need to, because a lot of this is kind of a regulatory vacuum, frontier anyway.
Right, and I suppose a part of me is stuck with sort of agreeing with me. A part of me is kind of like agreeing that we should seek our own justice and maybe use journalism as a way to sort of, sort of tell these stories and sort of, sort of blacklist these people. But then there's a part of me, Yves, what do you think? Is there a part of this that seems too capitalist? Yeah, that's the capitalist way. You sort of, find the hackers and scar them. You know what I mean? Like, which is exactly what Mia is thinking. Is it more socialist to just forget about the individual, think about the systems, don't blacklist them, and just let's just crack on and fix systems and don't ruin anyone's lives.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about like suing them, then yeah, the capitalist way. But if the sort of repercussions are forceful or violent, then only the state really has the power to do that. So it'd be more statist. Obviously, you got to make a distinction between like which kind of repercussions you're expecting these people to face. I mean, I said it before, but I think, coming back to education and people protecting themselves, I think is going to like eliminate a large part of that if we can do it well. There's also kind of a thing in the crypto space with, services like Coinbase, for example, where there's almost like de-education. So if you think about like the offerings, right, that they give, they incentivize people to, quote unquote, learn about crypto, and they do these like quippy, like little quizzes, and you don't really learn anything, but you get like, $3 of crypto at the end of it. And the problem is they're not incentivized to teach you about the thing that would actually make you safe and secure, which is getting off a centralized exchange. And so the information model that we're running on, and maybe that's the point about the capitalist thing, that it's because of the incentives, right? Most people are staying on exchanges. They're not storing the keys in the correct way because they're not going to be taught. Why would they be taught how to do that? It's counterintuitive to their business model.
Right.
Interesting. Good point. Lots to think about.
Yeah.
I thought that was going to be an easy one, but...
well, I think there's a real element. I mean, Web3 technology really allows the system to become accountable and every member of the system to become accountable because the information is accessible and transparent. So let's say someone comes in and hacks the system, affects someone's life. We can then like publicly display what has happened. We can learn from it, educate people, and the journalism aspect, I think, is integral to that. And then we allow the members of the community to learn from what has happened with this individual that was hacked and kind of let it take its course without the need of a state punishment or a state repercussion. Because essentially, if a member of the community is dysfunctional, trying to disrupt the community, I mean, that's a very basic awareness of, okay, we need to limit the impact of this dysfunction and this destruction. And that, I don't think that needs to be enforced. I think that will just naturally occur.
Okay, almost by osmosis. Osmosis of education will lead to it being not happening through different ways. Okay, I see. Okay, let's revisit this in a future episode. I want to move on to the next one. I mean, I think there's just so many questions that come out of that. I think we'll have to delve into that in a different time. Let's move on to the next one. Like this is so important. May, of course, is Mental Health Awareness Month, as people may or may not be aware. But the question that I was provoked to sort of bring up in this one was like, I mean, is our current systems really sort of like helping the mental health awareness fight? I think the answer to that is nope. So,
right.
Let's start with Spencer and work our way up to me, and then Yves. Spencer, how can Web3, do you think, how can Web3 help? How can blockchain technology collaboratively, how can we come together to get awareness out there? Can we use DAOs, blah 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 blah, to increase awareness and maybe to build a different system to increase awareness of these sort of health issues, mental health maybe being the most crucial one? What do you think?
I mean, what I've noticed is the general culture of collaboration and working together, and there's all these people that all over the globe that we believe in this better future that this technology can potentially help enable if we build it the right way, and we're all kind of working towards this together. And there's a kind of camaraderie there that I hadn't experienced before. Of actually having a shared cause and with people that you respect and who ideally respect you back as well. I mean, I think that's kind of emergent from this technology, but also the technology is kind of meant to encourage decentralized organization. So I think that's probably what's like when I think of mental health and this technology, I think of that kind of collaborative, communal, kind of communitarian ethos that I think is really refreshing and meaningful.
Yeah, me,
Absolutely.
I do agree.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to say mental health, we got to contextualize what the mental illness is right now, and so much of our community trauma, personal trauma, is propagated by the capitalist system because it demands that we are in competition with our community, and our fucking medical model is profit based. Like, may not be over in the UK, but it absolutely is in America. So it really serves the system.
Yves, we both live in the UK. There's a good deal of profit in there as well, isn't there? But yeah, carry on.
Yeah, so it's really like it's profit making to promote mental illness and to prevent mental health. So in that sense, like Spencer was saying, just the concept of a new way of moving forward that is functional and promising is a massive boon to the current state of mental health in the world, really. I mean, I can only really speak to the American mind. And man, are we fucking struggling. Like everyone I know, it's just getting worse. And it's because of capitalism. Like it's because of the way that we are reared and expected to live, to fight for our survival every day. And we have to generate money in order to live, to have a house, to have food. So if we're talking about a Web3 based governance model that would allow the individual, that would allow the collective to have access to the conversation, which dictates their society, we're all going to fucking agree that mental health is in dire straits. And if we all could just have a house and have food and have community, I mean, so many of our problems would be solved. And there's a therapist said something to me years ago that was just saying, like, you need to have a sliver of light. You need to have a light at the end of the tunnel when you feel like you're in a cage or you're stuck, or else you cannot continue. And Web3, to me, and the collaborative movement, the rhizomatic movement of organizing and sociocracy, decentralized systems, that is the light at the end of the tunnel for me. You know, the glimmer of hope that inspires me to continue on, even in the current state of absolute emotional chaos.
Yves, let me bring you in here, because if I can sum up maybe what these guys are saying, Spencer and Mia, and you guys jump in if I've got you wrong, but it almost seems like these guys are saying that come along with decentralization and bye the profit motive. I'm not exactly sure if that necessarily follows straight from decentralization. Sorry if I've summed you guys up wrong, but maybe just put that to Yves. Do you think that decentralization can help mental health awareness because bye profit motive? Is that what would you say to that? And is that the right way to think about it?
I mean, I don't think decentralization necessarily. I don't want to say I know, but I don't think it necessarily removes the profit motive. Maybe not on its own. But I would say, just in regards to like what might help mental health, is at least some kind of philosophy of decentralization, local communities. Because I mean, you know, if you look at, like, I'm not an expert on this, but, you know, the statistics of, like, suicides, you know, depression, like, levels of, like, feelings of aloneness, all this kind of stuff, they're all on the rise.
Right, yeah.
And one of the things, you know, there's many things that can help with that. Obviously, we all know of all the, I may imagine we all know of, like, a lot of the information, you know, the past few years in regards to, like, exercise and things, like, going back to old school shit, you know, like going back to like healthy food and like, you know, like having friends and socializing and, you know, having a healthy life in general. But yeah, so
I mean, humans are not that complex in terms of what makes our bodies run well. You know, we know the answers to that.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, I think the philosophy of decentralization, maybe like more communal approach, would at least go a long way to helping the problem. And I think that is something that's kind of, it's embedded into crypto, the crypto space, like this kind of communal, like how many times do you hear people say the word community, right? Like every other second someone mention the word community, and that's really good for people's mental health, you know, having a purpose, feeling like you're part of something. Also, you know, people to console you when you're feeling depressed, or like to help you if you're in like financial needs, you know, like Many reasons how that crypto can kind of benefit mental health, I think.
And just for folks listening, wondering, okay, and maybe they're listening to all of this and they're saying, okay, so I can see maybe the arguments that some of you guys are making that, take the profit motive out, that could lead to sort of post-capitalist alternatives to health. Some of you guys are also saying, even if it's not necessarily post-profit with decentralized tech, community brings along all sorts of things that you've just articulated, bringing sort of a sense of community, care, compassion together in sort of intimate networks. But how do you getting together in these communities in Web3? Like, what are you talking about? I guess what we're saying is, DAOs maybe are one forum, if you want to describe it that way, as where people can gather in the community and support each other. So you theoretically maybe could have like a mental health DAO, I don't know, where like people spread education, or like, could you conceivably see this, Mia? Maybe where like people get together and promote that cause, and people get in there and support it, and there's all sorts of efforts within the DAO or within the Discord within the DAO to do that. Is that, for people listening, is that the sort of form that this maybe could take?
Absolutely. I mean, and when you say post-profit, does a decentralized model automatically introduce a post-profit system? I would say that it automatically introduces a post-privilege system. As we get away from the hierarchical nature of organization, which essentially introduces a victim mentality into the populace, where it doesn't matter what I have to say, doesn't matter what my experience is, the representative is the only one who has access to the process of legislation and really dictates how the world works. And shifting to a decentralized model that's post-privilege, that requires the individual to interact, that really relies on the collective, that positions the individual as in charge of their own life, as being valuable. And that's a really major shift in mental health, because no longer are you kind of stuck as powerless in your own life and in your community. You're expected within this new decentralized model to participate, and your contribution is made accessible, made transparent. And I've noticed that once you start touching decentralization in Web3, your mental health is always relevant, because as you shift from this really toxic, traumatizing system of profit-based, you're going to have to heal yourself to not project those old traumas into this new system. And that's the example of the hacker. They're using a traumatized mindset of capitalization, of taking advantage of someone, of oppression, and bringing that into a decentralized organization. But at its base, moving into a DAO allows the individual to take charge of their own life. And in terms of mental health, I mean, that's kind of my forte. That's where I come from, is trauma work, personal development. And it's not until you make that choice and have that awareness that I am in control of my own life that you can even begin to heal your trauma. So in that sense, the decentralized model gives us the perfect opportunity to look that right in the face.
Yeah, and I think a good concrete example of what she's talking about there is how easy it is to do direct democracy and kind of liquid delegated democracy within DAOs, where you can either directly participate in every proposal if you want to put in all that considerative effort, or you can delegate to someone else in the DAO that you admire in that capacity, and you're able to change your delegation, at a moment's notice. I mean, you can configure all this stuff however it works, but I think it's more like the technology makes mechanisms like that more feasible than probably ever before. I feel.
Absolutely. I agree. Spencer, let's go to the last word on this with yourself. You've mentioned here CBDC, which I've heard of before. Would you want to mention a little bit about what that is, and then we'll move on to the next topic?
Oh yeah, I mean you guys were talking about mental health, and this came up to me as the only example I know of DAOs that are related to mental wellness, and in this case it's also psychedelics research, like therapeutical psychedelic research. I'm not involved in them, but I've heard a little bit about them. I threw it up there in case anyone was interested.
Yeah, and I've heard just about as much as you on that as well. They're looking at this, like, as I understand it, they're looking into sort of psychedelics and how you can use that in a decentralized way to sort of, you know, to, I guess, resolve all sorts of different issues, mental health perhaps being one of them. So yeah, that's I think Sardius, a friend of the show, had mentioned that before, as a potential DAO to look into. That's really interesting research, and again, something that this current system would just sort of scoff at, and again.
Oh, and intentionally repress.
Or intentionally,
like intentionally aggressively repress.
Well, exactly. Not even scoff at, intentionally repress. Exactly, and yet these decentralized systems, if people want to look into it, they'll form a DAO and they will look into it, and so they have. Okay, let's shift on to the next topic. This is one that Mia and Spencer had wanted to talk about, as well as I as well. And the question is, in real life and in Web3, how do we change the world? It's that age-old question, you know, capitalism versus communism, socialism, blah, 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 throughout history in the 20th century. Is it elite-led change with the vanguard of elites, the 1%, the 10% that bring us through change? Even if it's change we desire, who leads the way, or should it be the people that lead the way in all instances, even if it's a good way and a good path? The main question is, who should lead us? Not necessarily what's leading them or what's leading us, but who should lead it. Let's start off with Spencer. What do you think about this? Let's talk about your thoughts on just history in general, and then how do you think about what you've learned from history and how we should think about it for Web3? Who should be leading the change in Web3? What do you think?
I mean, I generally think that to understand social systems like that and to understand how to actually change like societal mechanisms, it does take a lot of vision. But and in that sense, central leadership is required. But I think that the people there should be like accountability. There should be like oversight. It shouldn't be, you know, just leave it up to the people to come up with answers, but someone who has some vision can propose an answer, and then so long as it's not an answer that everyone hates, then we can, you know, move forward with it. I mean, I do think that there is kind of a necessity for some kind of centralized leadership or inspiration, but that doesn't mean those people should be unaccountable. Yeah, at least that's what I generally think.
What do you think, Mia? Do you agree with that?
Well, one thing when you mention like the historical argument between capitalism and socialism and communism, I get the communist socialist critique a lot when I talk about Web3, and it's really confusing to me because those old theories are based in the system of representation in a centralized government body that is then organizing these new theories of how people should interact with the government itself, which is centralized. But Web3 is fundamentally decentralized. It's fundamentally accountable.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You wouldn't say so? I mean, I say it's fundamentally decentralized because it's a platform that is accountable and accessible and transparent. And because that moves away from the centralized system of information collection, of hiding things from the public, being able to aggressively repress something like psychedelics, that's because we're using a hierarchical model of representation, that these four people are in charge of our society. And yeah, like a DAO holds them accountable. There are going to be natural leaders in every field, but I think they're specific to the field. Like if you're a fucking plumber and we have plumbing issues, like I don't want to hear from the teacher. I don't want to hear from the electrician. I want to hear from the plumber.
Okay, but
and so
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, it's just it brings us away from relying on a few people to guide us. I think that we would be guided by centralized concepts, rubrics of success that are systems based, that aren't within a person, because that person has a bias, has an agenda, has an individual perspective. They're limited by their experience, like that example I used with the plumber and the electrician. You know, that we're never going to be a true direct democracy in every issue we face in society, because some people just don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Okay, let me bring Yves in here, and I've got a really pointed question for Yves, and if I can sum it up this way. If we focus in on the DAO world in Web3, Yves, there's some people that say, no, there should be some leaders in the core team that sort of like, they're well positioned to sort of lead on this, that, or the other. And that may be true. I see those arguments, and some of the guys have maybe pointed in that direction there. But what do you say, Yves, about the argument that is, yeah, the people may do it more inefficiently or ineffectively at the start or even in the midterm, but they'll get it right eventually. And that's the whole point of democracy, whether in real life, in the Web3 world, in a DAO, or whatever you want. You have to bring them in at some stage, and they'll learn, they'll mess up, but they'll learn and they'll get it right eventually. Yves, what do you think about this? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the context of DAOs, I think we're obviously on the frontier. So it's going to be messy, right? This is something that's never been done before on a scale that's never been done before. Like the crypto market cap was at 2 trillion at one point. That's like a small, that's not even a small army, right? That's a lot of people. That's a lot of resources in a network. It's no joke, right? We're a serious movement.
Right.
And yeah, I just think, just to kind of go on to one of Mia's points, she was talking about like information collection. I think that what's probably needed in the space is like some privacy. That's maybe where we're lacking. Because I think like obviously blockchains are public, and so all the information is transparent. Even it's not just the elites, right? The sort of powers that be that are going to be in check by crypto. It's also the little man. Like you can, with AI and stuff come in, it's easy to do pattern recognition, and we can track and trace people quite easily, or at least people with the resources to do so can, and just with all the data that's open to them. So yeah, I think that's a big challenge.
To the point about privacy, I totally agree, and I think a lot kind of hinges on how well zero knowledge cryptography is used. I know there's a couple projects like Holonym and a couple others that are using zero knowledge cryptography and traditional KYC methods to allow people to verify things like unique personhood or nationality or age without the user having to actually publish that information on a public database like a blockchain. But I think it's still like the early days of that, and I've been working with Holonym for a few months, and it's really awesome what this technology can enable. Like we'd be able to verify stuff like nationality without that stuff having to be public, without you needing to scan your ID and give it to Coinbase and stuff like that. There will be certain situations where that kind of KYC is still needed, but I think we're getting close to the point where that kind of privacy is actually enabled.
So you guys think privacy is integral to this question of who should lead the change in Web3?
I don't think it's. Maybe it could be integral. If you look at the success of Bitcoin, right? Who's Satoshi Nakamoto?
Okay.
And I think just to to relate it to your question, I don't know if sort of anonymous leaders are the answer, but I wonder if it does reduce some of the threats of the models we're used to.
Interesting. Mia, what do you think about this? Do you think there's a point here that the more you bring the people in, perhaps, and not have some anonymity around them, the more a threat they are from the current system, maybe to destroy them?
Yeah, that's something you guys have already said, terms that I know nothing about, like zero knowledge cryptology. But
these guys
what's coming to mind is I want to know.
I am.
But what's coming to mind is, do you guys read the book Ender's Game?
Yes, absolutely. Wonderful book. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a prophetic work. Orson Scott Card created the iPad in the late 80s and the internet, right? That's how that world was governed. And then his siblings created fake aliases and became these kind of national movers. And you can see throughout the book that, you know, the government does know who they are, that it is verifiable. But with the issue of privacy, you know, the information that will become available is the information that you contribute. And so in that sense, like, you are in control of what imprint and what footprint you leave. But I think it also begs the question of when is privacy detrimental and when it's beneficial? Because
aren't you only in control if you don't use it though, and then that locks people out?
well, I mean, you have access to it, but if privacy is a large value for you, then you probably would be best to not interact with it as much as you can. And that's, you know, you're going to have the consequence of that choice. If you feel like you have something really important to say, well, you could have your friend say it. You know, it could still be within the conversation.
I would
But
say
again,
is the answer. I guess, like, I'm not the expert, but do you think the answer might be closer to like privacy on the base layer of blockchains, and then people, so then everyone's that wants to be anonymous or private can be, and then they selectively reveal certain bits of information. If they want to reveal information about a transaction, then they can. But I don't know, what do you guys think? Do you think it'd be better to have privacy as a priority on the base layer and then give people a choice to reveal things on the public blockchain?
I think so. That would be my stance. I instinctively, that's where I would sit. I can't really see any argument that would, you know, sort of go for the opposite of that. But what do you guys think?
I mean, I think so. And one of the projects I'm with, Lobby 3, we're building a decentralized advocacy protocol, like a Web3 version of change.org. So think like if you're able to govern over the donation pool, this whole donation pool for a social cause or a campaign or something. And we're thinking that, there could be fun ways to like indicate, I participated in this campaign, I signed this petition, I donated. If we have all this like information on chain, then it's kind of like you're having your political footprint on chain. And we wanted to make sure that consent is very clearly communicated, and that you're not unwillingly having your whole political or advocacy kind of life stamped on a permanent public database. So I think this.
I mean,
should be
all these DAOs are social political organizations, essentially, right? You're making a statement, but when like for a large portion of these DAOs.
Yeah. I mean, and in this case too, it's like it's getting explicitly into stuff around campaign finance and electioneering and lobbying. But even just like you said, by virtue of being part of organizations like this, you are kind of signaling that you value this kind of coordinated effort or this kind of group decision making.
So, Yves, let me ask you one last question on this point, and then we'll move on to your question for the round, because it's really interesting. I just wanted to ask you one question on this that maybe our audience is thinking. Pro-privacy for the individual, but not for institutions. What would you are you equally pro-privacy for institutions as you are for individuals, or do you take a different tact for each?
No, I mean, I guess I would say, yeah, of course we should give institutions the ability, like we can't really lock them out. I guess we couldn't stop them, right? How would we do that? But I guess even the ethos, right? You want to sort of like free speech for all kind of thing.
So take the Lobby 3 example that Spencer's, sort of co-founded, like where, sort of individuals can maybe lobby for Web3 issues, but don't necessarily want to sort of give over their identity, I guess.
Well, I
would
think
you have the same for big corporations, or should we sit with that?
I mean, I think the answer, right, is to sort of push or pressure them to go on the transparent blockchains in order to build trust with the public, right? Look, if you're a bank and you want my money, you got to be honest, right? We should force that.
Right.
We should force it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, not force, literally encourage. Force. I mean, encourage, push the issue.
Right. Expect.
Okay. And if they don't and it corrupts the system, what should we do?
I mean, that's a little more challenging, I would say. If they don't, if they use, I mean, look, at the end of the day, look, obviously there's not an answer for everything, but what I would say is crypto is an experiment, right? And we all know that there's kind of like both polarities in the space, right? There's highs and lows.
Yeah.
And that's because it's open in nature and permissionless, which means anyone can access it. And it's also open to, as we discussed before, hackers. So good and bad people, right? Good and bad actors. But I think, in a sense, the philosophy, or at least the idea I mean, crypto's in a lot of senses like it's anarchistic, right? It was invented by cypherpunks and crypto anarchists. And so, I think part of that philosophy means accepting that with the negative sides, you get the positive sides, right? Like you can't you can't have your cake and eat it too, kind of thing. Like the reason there's so much innovation in the space is because of how open and accessible it is to everyone. But that also means anyone can come in, right? From the outside, any bad actors.
Got it. Right. Okay. We maybe need to revisit that topic another time, because it's a fascinating topic, and I think we need to do it justice with coming back. Let's end on a positive note. Yves, your question was, is crypto a disaster, or how did you word it earlier? Mess. Let's end on a positive note. Is the whole crypto world a disaster? How do you want to phrase this question?
Yeah, I think what I said is all of crypto corrupt. No, I said has a nice way to say it. Has crypto lost its way?
Has lost its way. Okay,
Yeah.
slightly more diplomatic. Okay, so who do you want to go to first? Mia, what do you think? Is the whole world, or is crypto lost its way? What do you think?
Well, I think it's reflecting our current mind state. It's just a platform. It's amoral. There's certain functionalities within the system that requires us to behave a little differently, but can easily be co-opted by a small group, and that's where like the anti-blockchain enthusiasts are coming from. Where if the elite put everybody on the blockchain, then we have no privacy, and in that sense, that's the dystopia. But if the collective enters into the blockchain space and we use decentralized DAOs, things like that, then it really allows us to have all the information come available so we can then address our problems in real life, socially, politically, culturally, things like that. So I don't think it's lost its way. I think it's mirroring our issues.
So it's mirroring a society in the meat space that's lost its way. That's interesting. Spencer, what do you think? Then we'll bat it back to Yves for his roundup. What do you think, Spencer? Is it lost its way?
I mean, I personally think that if we want this technology to actually be digested properly by society and not just rejected as some gambling house, then I think there is going to be some degree of compliance necessary. But I also think that while we're in this phase that's kind of like a regulatory vacuum, kind of like a frontier, then there is an opportunity to set new precedents and kind of, I think, predetermine what kind of status quo will follow as society does digest this technology and set up rules and everything. And a part of that is just lobbying and influencing good policy, and a lot of it is just free market stuff, like creating products that have demand that drive this kind of grassroots desire and all that stuff. But ultimately, I do kind of take compliance a bit seriously, if for no other reason than just to minimize risk that can then kind of block the kind of progress we're talking about.
Yves, what do you think? Well, how do you sum up your point, and what do you think? How would you describe whether the crypto world has lost its way or not?
I guess in some sense it does sort of I guess depend, or how you view it would depend on what you think the scope of the problem is that we're trying to solve. So in my opinion, I mean, I think there's a long way to go. I don't think we're even. Are we 0.5% the way there?
But what's the target we're aiming for then, as you visualize it?
Well, I think that's a hard question to answer because you can't see into the future. But I guess in some sense, it's beyond the imagination. Like the things we can achieve, as cheesy as it sounds, right? Like Bitcoin was revolutionary, so was Ethereum. Right. Have we lost that spirit? Those things are game changer. Look at where we're at now. Like I said before, 2 trillion market cap. Look at all the people across the world that it's helped. Look at all the different, like, the DAOs, the culture, the art, you know, all of it, the music, the imagery, the videos, the documentaries being made, the people, the communities, like, like there's so much going on. You know, different consensus mechanisms, different voting mechanisms. We mentioned juries before, blockchain juries.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like the amount of innovation and experimentation is you know, excuse the pun, off the chain. But I think
I like that.
yeah, I think yeah, the problems are massive, and you know, initially it was to sort of fight back against like the central banks and you know, governments, and so yeah, we should carry that spirit on. I think we have lost it a little bit, but there is a bit of like a what I guess is called a dark renaissance happening right now with projects like DarkFi, LunaDAO, NIM. You know, there's a bunch of like cool stuff going on. We've seen like, you know, the Aztec stuff, you know, obviously like Tornado Cash, like just a Monero still going, you know, the OG. So yeah, I think yeah, it has lost its way. In some sense, yeah, we don't talk maybe we don't talk enough. Like, you hear a lot of people in the space talking about how good regulation is, or like, oh, we want to be friends with the institutions, and I'm not saying in some sense we don't. Like, we also want to be compassionate to other human beings, but do we want to be naive? Like, oh yeah, it's fine, the government can regulate everything. Like, they're going to regulate it away from us. Like, this is like a real shot at like changing the world. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be like, so, you know, like sound like some like utopian whatever, but no, I think it's a possibility. I think it already has. I think sometimes we even take it for granted, like how much we've already accomplished, you know. But we can do more. We can do more on a positive, hopeful note. Yeah.
I think there's that old debate, isn't there, within sort of, you know, so I suppose at least the crypto left, that, you know, anyone who's like maybe anarchist or socialist or whatever, that says, you know, sort of, oh, you know, you have to use the tools that we're in to defeat the system that we're in and get out of it, versus no, you can't interact with the system at all, you can't use it and get out of it. There's that old
don't ask for permission. Why are you asking for permission to create our own stuff?
Exactly. Well, there's that debate to be had. You can see both sides of it. Let me ask you this, everyone, to finish on, because I feel that this is another topic we need to come back to. Do you think that in 5 years' time, we'll be looking back on this and going, okay, right, you know, 2023, all right, okay, yeah, crypto had been going for 10 years or more, but really, had it really been going since 2019, 2017, 2020? It's in the advent stage. In 5 years' time, we'll be looking back and going, you guys were freaking out in 2023. Give yourselves a fucking break. Okay, there's going to be peaks and troughs, but we're, you know, relax. We're building a new system out of the old. Don't stress too much. You know, it'll be fine. Or is that complacent thinking? Let's round it up with a quick series of thoughts from everyone, and then we'll close out. Spencer, let's go with you first. Do you think we're being hyperbolic here, or complacent?
I maybe in certain situations both, but I do think that what like we four and the people in our groups, the potential we see in this technology is that we're kind of able to see, I think, a bit farther into the future, or understand the potential a bit more than even most legislators and advisors to legislators. When you look at some of the policy being drafted around this, and the definitions don't quite square up with the reality we know about the technology and what can be done with it. So I mean, I do think that this kind of society we're building in a shared virtual machine is profound. Like, I think it's really as profound as it can get in terms of possibilities. And I think it's tough to overstate that. And so I don't know. I do think that there's still going to be a lot of headspace in terms of potential, in terms of like frontier space that's ahead of where the government catches up to, and there's always going to be opportunities to innovate there. And then at least those of us that want to work with the government to influence policies and lobby and everything, where we'd be able to have a kind of rear guard effort influencing the formation of laws that's conducive to this technology that we think is, in a positive way that we think.
Mia, you've got 27 seconds. Go for it. You've got 23.
Well, I'm fiercely optimistic, and that is an intentional choice because the way that I expect things to happen influences the way that I behave. And I think that the technology world, the crypto world, is pretty selective with how they expect things to work. And there's this whole other world of social change that's based in mutual aid networks and agriculture and community health that I think is about to meet the crypto world. And that's, I think, what we're waiting for. And then, of course, we have the labor movement, which is now entering into the crypto world. So I think in 5 years' time, we're going to be really proud of ourselves. But I think we do need to act. Like, this is a pivotal year, this year and the next year, to make that decision of how we're going to organize ourselves with this new technology.
I agree. Interesting. Yves, final words. Close out the pod. What's your final thoughts, buddy?
I think we should be optimistic, but not naive. So you can be both of those things. But sometimes, you slip into when you're too optimistic, you can slip into naivety. And just to quickly, I guess, add a point about one of Mia's points, the hackers problem, I kind of want to finish on, I guess.
Sure.
One way to look at it is, that maybe these people are sort of, their direction's misplaced, because, code is powerful. Code can create change on a global scale. It's accessible to almost anyone with a computer or a mobile device. And, someone can create something that will, affect or be used by millions or billions of people. And maybe these people that are hacking people's funds, stealing from people, are actually just intelligent people, but gone down the wrong path, right? I think we would probably all agree that they probably are pretty smart if they're hacking people.
No doubt.
And so, like Mia was saying, like, why are they doing this? Why? I mean, look, there's always going to be bad actors, right? But I think the point is that we've got an excess of them. We could probably reduce that a lot by being a bit nicer to people and like educating people and having them as part of our community. So yeah, that's what I want to end on.
Interesting point. I think I agree with that, definitely. Right, let's wrap it up there.
Yeah, can I just say one point, Alex, is just that basically, like, we're not telling people we're making a perfect system. We're just saying it can be immensely improved.
Yes.
It's never going to be perfect, but it can be a hell of a lot better.
Incremental, but I hate that word. But anyway. Oh my God, I can't believe that word escaped my mouth. But anyway. Okay, let's wrap it up there, folks. Thanks for listening, guys. It's been a pleasure chatting to you all. We're definitely going to have you back on because it's been really fascinating. Thank you for taking the time out of your beautiful evenings wherever you are in the world, US and UK. And yeah, thanks, folks, for listening. Join us again sometime. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, cheers, guys. Best. Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah, thanks for hosting.